Okay, morning brothers and sisters. A quick video here for 8th day dawning, I think. We're gonna look at the grove, the pillar, and the cornerstone. And we're gonna see how that absolutely defines the female. Because the passage just said it's found in. I'm not even gonna go online yet, I don't think, for this. We're gonna go to Genesis 21:33, and this is what it says. And then we're going to gradually understand through just a few simple verses that it definitely is she who is speaking. So Genesis 21:33, it says, "And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and he called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God." So we see Abraham planting a grove, and we hear him always talking about the Asherah grove, the Asherah grove, the Asherah groves, or the Asherah poles. And that's where they went up to worship the feminine as a harlot. That's what the men of Baal wanted. So we see that going on. And this is going to come in our description in when we go in and look up the Strong's Hebrew pillar. But here we go to Genesis 35:19. We see the pillar and whose grave it ends up on. It says, "So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. So Jacob set up a pillar on her grave, and it marks Rachel's tomb to this day." So it's identifying the feminine. We had a pillar put on Rachel's grave. We see Abraham planting a grove, which is the same thing. That's where pillars come from, your trees. So if we go to Psalm 144, verse 12, we get this further identified once again. Verse 12. Psalm 144, verse 12, "May our sons in their will be like plants full grown, and our daughters like corner pillars or cornerstones." So who's the cornerstones? No, or the cornerstones cut for the structure of a palace. We see that palace identified in Song of Songs 8. And it's identifying actually the house in the forest of Lebanon. So, or cornerstones cut for the structure of a palace, or it states in the King James, polished after the similitude of a palace. So we are so seeing the grove, the pillar, the cornerstones identified as female or cornerstone. So pillar for Rachel here, it says so in verse 20, Genesis 35 verse 20, the word pillar is Strong's Hebrew 4676, and it's 32 occurrences. Now let's just take a look and see what we can learn on that, because I have not looked at the 32 occurrences. Okay, so I'm looking for the Genesis passage, which is, what's the number? 4676. Okay, so it's not that string. It's a different string. Let me see here if I can find it. Okay, so I don't have it. I just quickly pulled them up. So we'll just pull up Strong's Hebrew. And it was 4676. Sorry, I should have had this pulled up. Okay. So this had 32 occurrences. 4676. It's a pillar, it's a stump, it's a noun, feminine. So a pillar, a stump, obelisk. Oh, look at that. So we see how the mind works in perversion here on earth, because they would have you believe that the obelisk means something very different. And yet, God says, you took everything and you turned it all upside down, such as the key of David, the obelisk, and all these things, when they're truly representing something that, a perverted mind wouldn't even go to. But that's what living under a sinful law system will eventually cause the brain to do. It becomes nothing but absolute perversion in so many ways. And so we get the obelisk identified as a pillar, a stump, and here in Genesis 21:33 as a grove. And so we see them changing the glory over to a harlot spirit in a sense. And she becomes very angry. So here we have the obelisk pillars. This is a feminine noun. It's not masculine. You'd think it would be masculine. A garrison, a standing image, true. A pillar, true. Something stationed, a column, or a memorial stone. By analogy, an idol, also a standing image, a pillar. Yes, that's absolutely true, because they shifted it over in the beginning to these two images, Baal and then a harlot. Eventually, because of what a harlot represents to the male, which means she'll build him up, and she says, no one sees me. She'll disappear from view. That's the nature of a harlot, in building up the image of man as God, the idol as man and God. Her image, her idol, will actually completely disappear from view. And then we are left with complete Baal worship in the land, and her, over time, actually forgetting the truth of who she is, and him forgetting it as well. And so we end up with a false foundation. So we get 32 occurrences here. So Genesis 28:18, let's see what it says. Let's just go in and look at some of these. We have 32 occurrences. Let's see if we can understand something right quick. I won't do too many of them, but just to give us an understanding maybe. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head, headstone, you see, and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. And he called that place Bethel, though previously the city had been named Luz. Lot to look into, isn't there? The headstone is identified as a pillar stone, which is female, not male. That's your head. Let's go back. Let's look up the next one, okay? So that's in the same passage, Genesis 28:22. But let's look at it. It does bring in God here. Let's see what it says. It says, and this stone I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. Oh, there we go, God's house. The house in the forest of Lebanon was God's house, her house, which is a palace, where the daughters will be the pillar stones, cornerstones polished after the similitude of a palace. Yeah, identified in Song of Songs, chapter 8. All right, so in this stone I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you gave me, I will surely give you a tenth. Okay, so we're also seeing, whether we know it or not, the tenth identified as going to the feminine, but then they have it as the high priest that had no beginning and no end, the order of Melchizedek, him getting a tenth. So there's a deeper riddle here that's got to be looked at eventually over time. Okay, so what else do we got? Genesis 31:13. Let's see how long we can go on this. I do have to be leaving soon, so I am the God of Bethel. Yeah. So this is Genesis 31:13. So this is one of the passages that we used to identify that it definitely is female. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. You see what we're looking at? She's speaking. And she's not happy with what the men are doing, which is building a male idol up and tearing the female house down, where she was the living God that she adhered to, she listened to, and as such she had great power in the land. And she says, if man don't want you, I'm taking my power off of you. He don't deserve your power. He don't deserve my power. So, but over time she also knew the daughters were going to slowly turn and bow to the idol of Baal. Jesus, bridegroom, Lord and Master, who created all things, and who led you out of Egypt, and protected you, and birthed you through the waters, and travailed to bring forth his children. Yeah, that's all male, don't you know? So we'll go to Genesis 31. They have multiple passages in Genesis of the pillar, which is where you got to actually go to define the feminine, because gradually over time they just completely write that out, so you have no understanding of what's being addressed. So you really do got to go back to the old patriarchs to really get your understanding of your feminine and what they really was doing, and what she was saying, fine, if this is how it's going to go down, then I'm leaving. The glory will be leaving. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness. So what was the heap? It was a pile of stones, wasn't it? So Laban also said to Jacob, here is the mound, and here is the pillar I have set up between you and me. This mound is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this mound to harm you, and you will not go past this mound and pillar to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Did he? And yet he wrestled her for her birthright. I question Jacob. So yeah, here they got it male. I don't think it's male. Gal. You have an actress named this Gal Gadot. Look her name up. It links right back to some of the passages in Song of Songs, and it means a heap, a wave, a billow. Garden rock pile, a ruinous heap, yeah, that's just what I thought it was. And it tells us in Song of Songs that these daughters actually became what is known as a ruinous heap when they tore her well down. They tore her well of water down. And that's what they did. And but to do that, they had to tear the daughter's house down. They had to tear her down. And to the great extent also that they removed her sons from her. The sons eventually flip over to bow the harlot's way, is what they do. So witness in the Old Testament, I think they want to put it male. No, they got feminine. In the New Testament, witness, I believe they want to put it male. It shifts out. It flips around. So back we go. Let's see what else we've got here. So Genesis 31:45. Was I there? That wasn't the one I was in. I just read Genesis, 31:13. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. So come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between you and me. So who's the witnesses in the earth? Well, if they're identified as pillars, then it is female witnesses, it representing the Holy Spirit in the earth. Which is why they have to testify in the end what it is that they have borne witness to, and what the law system is like. It is on you to pick your head up to understand what your job is to do. We have also this witness identified in Genesis 21. Also, when Abraham takes 7, it says lambs, but if you go and do your study, it is she-goats. For a witness of the well of water that Abimelech guaranteed would be his, and that they wouldn't take it from him. And so he sets out these 7 she-goats as a witness. So we're getting the witness of the Holy Spirit in the earth, identified as female, also identified here as a pillar. And we see the pillar on Rachel's grave. We see the daughters set up as pillars, polished after the similitude of a great palace. And he said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took some stones and they made a mound, and there by the mound they ate. So we're getting all of our understanding what happened to these great witnesses in the earth. They eventually tore them down because they didn't want to witness, didn't want them witnessing to what the men were doing, or at least to have an understanding of what they were to witness to. And God says, you are to have no other God before you. Well, they built up another God before them, and that was Baal, the idol standing. And she's supposed to witness to this. She's supposed to know enough to witness to this. Is she gonna be able to do that? And God says, stand up for yourself, God. Defend your cause. All right? So you are so to witness to what you have borne witness to in the earth. This is what these pillars are identified as. The she-goats are identified as. They're with the Shulamite, a flock of she-goats, which is identified as the camp of Mahanaim, the presence of God on earth, which is the Holy Spirit, or the Holy One. So if we continue down here, again, we're going to end up with Rachel setting a pillar over Rachel's grave. Then in Exodus, we go here and we see what the kings begin to do with these pillars. All right, they begin to take oaths to these pillars, not to the women. They're taking it to the pillars because they can make that pillar represent whatever they want to. So you see the transference of the real glory as a person, a woman, a righteous woman, being transferred over to, a material object. And so you begin to see the practice of what the warlocks were really up to. Because it's much easier, to change the nature of an object and make it appear whatever you want than it is to change a person into what you want them to. So they kind of impose that on the objects, that this is her, but we're going to make that a harlot and not the righteous. And over time, that actually draws power from the power of darkness, whatever that may entail and be. But we see the practice of the warlocks, the warlords, coming in against her in war and in hate. And then we see the witches practicing in passages like Ezekiel 13 and begin to build on this religious lie and idol. And the video that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that will be put on my other channel, Ruth Abby, will help to identify how that got furthered over time, how this religious idol of a bull in the Old Testament came to be a man standing as your Lord and God. Okay, so do not bow down before their gods or worship them or follow their practices. You must demolish them and break their sacred stones to pieces. So again, what we were seeing here was the Asherah poles that they had gone up to the high places and they had made, and we hear what they were doing in these high places. It was pretty sick what they were doing. So we see a covenant being made, established, and it was by tearing down or smashed their sacred pillars. Their sacred pillars was the poles of Asherah. And from what we can understand, Asherah was the harlot that came to be in covenant, where they're also called El Barith. So you got El Barith, the covenant of El, which was representing, they were changing the glory over to these Asherah poles, harlots. All right? So women that were willingly coming as harlots. And then you have El Barith in covenant with Baal Barith. All right? And Baal Barith was who men like Gideon, men like Elijah was in battle against to remove this wicked covenant out of the land. All right? Now what gets missed here when all they want to focus on is the harlot spirit and the Asherah poles and then this Baal Barith, when you've got men like Gideon going against Baal Barith, he was going against Baal Barith on behalf of the true glory of God, which you don't see her. They don't want you to see her because over time they completely removed the other half of Gideon's covenant, which was the righteous daughter of Israel, all right, which sat between the cherubim, which I'm not so sure isn't clearly identified when Jeroboam does so make two calves. And so it's almost showing you the glory sitting in Israel in the 10 northern tribes, though it's pure idolatry what he's doing. But we're going to look at that in that video that I will post on Ruth Abby. So yeah, so Exodus 23, they broke the sacred pillars. So Exodus 24:4. So we're getting an understanding, are we not? How can we not see what was going on in the Old Testament? Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning and he built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars. This is your matriarchal system. That's what this is. They won't tell you it. And even when you go look up the goats, the 12 goats in one passage, they want to put it male. But if you get studying and going deeper into it, you will realize that the 12 goats were actually she-goats, representing your 12 matriarchs or 12 heads, mothers, of each of the tribes of Israel. So this is why he does this, though they don't want you to know it. They want to remove the feminine completely out of the context. And over time you begin to rely on the men on the pulpit who's supposed to be studying and teaching you the truth, who really begins to teach you nothing but themselves, male, 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 which is Baal standing with the harlot spirit, hiding in his heart that exalts him as God. You get it? No. But you will, maybe, if you're willing to listen to truth. So Moses then, he set up the 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. He's actually representing the 12 matriarchs, because this then gets transferred over to 12 she-goats. Though they put he, if you do a deeper study, they later on will admit, yeah, it was 12 she-goats. Okay. We'll go back. We'll just look at a couple more. So we see them smashing these sacred pillars and cutting them down. They break their images. So we do see them taking the harlot image out of the land. After they transfer the righteous daughter's image over to, a harlot spirit, these Asherah poles. So, we're playing around with, what is clearly identified in the scriptures as allegory, which is apparently the way that witchcraft, wizardry, warlock, all these things work, which is why God says we shouldn't have any images before us. I think we're all guilty today. We pick up these little trinkets. This was gave to me. The head is pretty weird on it. But this was gave to me. And I don't normally collect stuff like that. But God says don't have no image before you. And the reason is because we're shown why. Because they take these images and they transfer onto it what they want it to be as opposed to what it really is. And from there they begin to build power upon a lie, is what they begin to do. And it's no different with the image of Baal, Jesus standing as your Lord and God. This is how it all came about. And certainly my study in Jeroboam Son of Nebat helps us to understand how that got to be so. So Deuteronomy 7:5, they smash their sacred pillars, they hew down the poles of Asherah. So where else? We got 32. The sacred pillar of Baal we have. So the sacred pillar of Baal is identified as barith. Well, El means God. But they transferred God's righteous spirit, understand, over to an image that they could make bow to him, and then over time just completely wiped out the image. That's why the harlot spirit says, no one sees me. Right? Because if she's still standing, then we're going to have issues. He's not going to be the true Lord in the earth if she's still standing there and everybody can see her. And if she's a harlot spirit and he's married to her, well, hey, you're going to see that. Can't have that, So she's got to hide. She's got to disappear from view in order for the whole context to work, is what's got to happen. Okay. So I'm just about done. They demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal. And people have used it for a what? A latrine to this day. So is this where Jehu, was that the name of, another name of, Gideon had a couple names he went by. I don't know if that's one of the names that Gideon went by. But when that happened, at this time when Gideon was going after Baal barith, barith means covenant, that's all it means. El means God covenant, and Baal barith would mean husband covenant, that's what it would mean. And so when Gideon came after the men of Baal in this covenant, they run to the high tower or to the tower of barith, the harlot spirit that they're in covenant with, because they've transferred the image of the righteous spirit over to these Asherah poles, and the people have begun to go up and to, change the image of God, basically over time into animals. You become an animal-minded being. In a beast system that wants nothing more than violence and depravity and really changed the righteousness over into wickedness, into things that God never intended any of this to be. So we see that. So they change it over to a latrine, is what we see. Isn't that neat? I think that's pretty cool. So they demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal. And people have used it for a latrine to this day, for an outhouse. Lord of Dung. So we get all the negativity of the pillars and the Asherim poles, and every time they say grove, they want to make it negative. And yet it's clearly identified as feminine in a covenant with God is what it represented. When you have Abraham in Genesis 21:33, which is at the very beginning, and Abraham planted a grove and Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God, she. So we are so identifying it as she, that they broke their covenant with. That's who they broke their covenant with and built Baal up as Lord and God on earth. I don't know how you can't see it. I say it many times. But it is true. How can you not see it? It's there. For anybody who wants to open their eyes and see the deeper truths. God don't work this way. God does not work this way. Anyway, there's a quick video. Thanks for watching. It's pretty early here this morning. Got to get moving along here. Thought I'd pop a quick video off. As I was studying the Word last night, this came to me and I said, well, hey, I should share it. Not that most ain't probably been through this material already. We've been through it way back. Moving along. So, again, thanks for watching. I hope the Lord blesses you with an abundance of truth. And I hope you all have a really nice day. And thanks again.